So, Jay, we're just going to dive right into it. No time for pleasantries.
All right.
No time to talk about the fact that you just got back from 2 weeks caving and kayaking in Vietnam, which sounds like a really cool vacation. You and I have known each other for a long time, and I bet a lot of people here know you as well, Jay. And you've kind of done an interesting career move. So, founder of Rubicon Project, nice run there, tremendously successful. And you've gone from something, and before that, a history of entrepreneurship. And you've gone from entrepreneurship to MasterCard. Why?
Yeah, well, it's been, I should say it's been partnering with a lot of entrepreneurs along the way. And it's interesting because the first time I saw the power of the internet and a lot of things we work on was related to commerce and e-commerce before it really existed. And this was many years ago. And my big client at the time was Pizza Hut. And I called them up and I said, look, you don't know this, but there are these computers connected to one another, and you're going to be able to use these things to deliver pizza. And these people looked at me like I had just landed from the moon because it was so long ago. But that was the first frame. Commerce was the first frame. There was a directory company that really caused me to think a lot about navigation. There was a big data company, Edgar Online, that was all about how do you harness unstructured data. And we took that company public on the NASDAQ. And then early days over the last 10 years or so around data-driven advertising and programmatic. And I think the move to MasterCard has a lot to do for me with the belief in where is the industry going, writ large, larger than any of our individual companies. And we talk a lot about ad tech and the consolidation of ad tech, which, by the way, I think is a great thing. It's a sign of a maturing market for all of us. But wider than that, we talk about the combination of ad tech and martech, right? And I think that's a lot about this conference. So how the merchant or the advertiser attaches to this web of activation we've built in advertising tech. But there's a larger frame, and Anika, your CPO, she started this morning by encouraging all of us to think beyond marketing and how we surprise and delight consumers, right? And if I think about kind of the slightly longer frame for all of us, is we are seeing the worlds of advertising and commerce collapsing in on each other, getting closer to one another, right? So, Alec was just up here talking about connected TV. What's happening in television? Linear television, we're all tired of looking at the ads. Mobile, a lot of us install ad blockers on mobile devices. The ads are disruptive, right? So what's happening there? And we're going towards over the top, right? Because we don't want those disruptive ads we see in linear television. So one of the things we're seeing, and maybe you can see it a little bit with Snapchat because they're not ads the way we've all thought of ads. But I think if you look across Asia and you look across like Viber, Kakao, Line, some of the messaging apps, what's happening to a lot of advertising is utility is coming back. And utility as it connotes value to each of us as consumers. And what's a core function of utility, right? At MasterCard, it's payments, right? But the idea is commerce is a big part of that. If you look at some of the Chinese internet companies, a big part of those messaging apps, they have all pieces of our ecosystem built into them. So they have a Facebook, an eBay, and Amazon all rolled up into one. And a lot of that is how we move beyond marketing. And I'll give you one other piece of this, which is it was so funny to hear this description this morning from Anika, because if you look at how MasterCard describes in its own marketing, right? So not the data commercialization business that a couple of us sit on, but the MasterCard writ large is we talk about MasterCard being a platform of surprises and how the brand delights consumers, right? And I think that's how we need to frame how a lot of us think. And I think a lot of the business does not think that way, and that's the opportunity.
So you're bringing some fresh thinking to MasterCard. I mean, you talked about a lot of trends in the last couple minutes, and you've certainly had a diversity of experience.
Yeah.
If you think about how you apply those to MasterCard, can you help us, give us a contrast between the MasterCard you joined and the MasterCard that you will someday become?
Okay. Well, I think there are a lot of things that people don't even understand about MasterCard as it exists today.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of people think of MasterCard as a credit card company. And the thing many people don't know is MasterCard does not issue a single credit card. The issuing banks issue the credit cards. So MasterCard is a global technology company focused on payments, right? In that orientation is completely different than how a lot of people conceive of the company. And then the division that our group sits in is called Advisors, which is also interesting because people don't know Advisors. It's a 15-year-old division, and the whole idea, and think about this 15 years ago, not today, 15 years ago, was that MasterCard said, hey, there's so much data exhaust that comes out of the core global payments business. Why don't we build solutions and build insights based on all that activity, right? And use it to build closer partnerships at the time to all the financial institutions, the issuing banks that issue the credit cards. And that was the start of this group, and it went on from there to do the same thing for merchants, what most people in this room call advertisers. And then 4 or 5 years ago, it was how can we bring that same expertise to different verticals? So whether it's retail, or restaurants, or travel, or what we're talking about today, the media business.
Sure. And if you play that forward another 3 to 5 years, is there, what's the thing that no one in the room is thinking about that you're going to bring to MasterCard that's going to surprise us all?
Yeah, okay. All right, the platform of surprises. Here we go. Well, I think the view in the room, hopefully, if you're here, is that data wins and data helps people win. But there are a couple further threads for how we think of it at MasterCard. One is the idea of smart and trusted data. So one of the things that people don't spend enough time thinking about is what you could call the edges. So you have the middle, and most of us are part of the middle, all the technology infrastructure in ad tech and martech. But the edges, the advertisers on one end and the consumer and the media owner on the other, kind of the edges of the supply chain, as they become more cognizant of everything we're doing, right? And in the case of someone like an advertiser, or spending more and more investment in this area, what are some of the things they're going to care about? So they're going to ask tougher questions about the efficacy of things like data-driven insights and solutions. They're going to ask about things like privacy by design. So is privacy considered from the moment a solution is conceived? Because think about it, if you're a big retailer and you've had a data breach, right? you're very cognizant of this. So as you go into this market and figure out, hey, I'm generating all these insights inside, now I need a tight activation, but I'm going to have to turn around and explain to my consumer, to her, why I'm doing all this and how it's all done with the consumer in mind and the consumer respected.
Well, I mean, that's interesting. You talk about the edges, and immediately, probably a lot of people in this room start to think, well, isn't that a little bit intrusive for customers? And how do you avoid being in that gray area? Any thoughts there about how you're navigating that?
Well, I think a lot of it. Tell me if this is what you're asking. A lot of it is just being very open and transparent. I mean, and I think a lot of that is something we've seen a lot of in the business. If you shine a light on something, all the bad stuff starts to kind of come out of it. So I think that's what we're in a big process around. And in fact, one of the things I think the data sector could look at is all the innovations in the supply chain that have been built on the media side in programmatic in the last 5 or 10 years. It used to be, and there's still a lot of issues, but there's been tremendous progress around things like buyer ID and deal ID and some of the specifications and standards around open RTB and the things driven at an industry level that ultimately put more confidence in the supply chain. And I think it's on all of us to ask ourselves, what does that mean on the data side of the business? Because that will just give more confidence in how we do business, and will bring all of us.
Well, Jay, you said something a few days ago that data must be customer friendly.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean, practically in our world, how do you make data customer friendly?
Yeah, it's related to the idea of privacy by design. And that was one of the big attractive things about MasterCard and understanding its orientation there, that all of these considerations are considered ground up, and they're considered in terms of how is the consumer protected, and then how are all the other business entities we deal with protected? How are the merchants, the issuing banks, and the company itself, both from a regulatory aspect and also a reputational
So visibility, control, security.
I think those are all part of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Talk about global data. Something else you've talked about in the past. What does that mean, and how are you incorporating that into your strategy at MasterCard?
Yeah, so global should be a huge opportunity for all of us. And I think for most of us in the room, our businesses on the commercialization side are probably focused on US, maybe parts of Europe. And one of the things we're looking for is how do we take this and start to go in markets all around the world? Because again, I can look at the experience from a place like Rubicon, where you start to do business with big global partners, the big ad holding companies, and you do well, and the brands want you to travel with them all over the world. So I think that's a big area for everybody in this room is to do that.
So you mentioned Rubicon, and so let me throw a curve at you here. I mean, right now you're the steward of MasterCard, but you also have a unique experience because, like many folks in the audience, you have a real technology view of the world.
Yeah.
For folks out there, what do they need to do differently to get more traction with MasterCard? What are the best folks doing well, and are there any egregious errors that people are making that you want them to know about?
Well, we talked about global, so we're interested in talking to anybody that has a view about where to go and how to get there on that aspect. we're looking, and I don't think this is a MasterCard thing, I think this is an industry thing, which is there is still tremendous friction in the supply chain. And a lot of what we do is still highly transactional. And so how do we, in a smart way, in an easy way, in a low tax way, take some of that friction out? Because if we do that, that should accrue to everybody, right? So who's got a point of view there too? So those are two. And then, you know, the big thing, like for everybody else, is there's a talent war on too. And so, you know, how do we get after that?
Yep. If I give us 1 minute to do fast word association.
Yeah, let's do it. That's my favorite.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to fire some stuff off in no particular order.
All right, and you're going to play too, I think.
Privacy.
By design. Go ahead, you can say too. Privacy. No, you got to say.
By design? Facebook.
People.
Amazon.
Commerce.
Television.
Video.
Hey, you really are just giving me one-word answers.
That's
Future
what you
of
asked for.
commerce.
Utility.
Innovation.
Agility.
That's good. Snapchat.
Messaging.
Measurement.
Optimization.
Good. All right. The doors are opening. A new session is about to start. What's the one piece of advice that everybody in this room ought to know based on your experience?
Know when to declare victory, big and small.
Like, you got to elaborate on that. What does that mean?
That's my advice.
All right. Jay, thank you. This was a
Howe,
lot of fun.
thank you very much.